Sit closer to the fire. Yes, right there. The storm outside is growing, and though this flame still burns, I cannot promise it will last until the end of this tale, and you must hear it while the fire still holds, for this story cannot be told in darkness. It is a story that survived only because one man lived long enough to whisper it shaking, broken and half-mad to a wandering skald many centuries ago. A story of a village erased not by war, nor sickness, nor famine, but by something older than the gods themselves. Something that wakes only when winter becomes too deep, too silent, too ancient. Tonight, I will tell you about Skjoldheim, and about the night they called the Night of the Last Fire. Skjoldheim was a small settlement tucked between two frozen cliffs, hidden where the fjords curved inward like a beast's open jaws. It was a place the sun barely touched during the winter months. A place where the wind always sang, sometimes like a whisper, sometimes like a scream. Its people were hardened by the cold, by the hunts, by the long nights that stretched like endless tunnels of frost. But even they had never known a winter like that one. It began with the sky. 3 nights before the end, a strange ripple passed across the heavens like the northern lights, but wrong. Instead of green and gold and blue, the sky flickered with a pale, sickly white. It looked as though someone were pressing their hands against the fabric of the world from the other side, trying to push through. Children cried, animals refused to leave their shelters, and the elders whispered that they had seen such a sky once before, long ago, before the oldest among them had even been born. Then came the cold, the kind of cold that did not bite, it suffocated. It sank deeper than skin. It found bone. It found thought. It found breath. A cold that froze water inside sealed barrels, that cracked stones in half, that made firewood brittle as glass. By the morning of the final night, the river had stopped moving entirely, not because it had frozen on the surface, but because it sounded as though something below was holding it still. And then, someone went missing. Her name was Runa, a simple woman, not young, not old, known for gathering herbs at the border of the pine forest. She left before dawn, wrapped in furs thicker than she was. She never returned. A search party was sent 8 hunters, strong men accustomed to the wild. They came back pale, shaking, unable to speak at first. When the chieftain demanded answers, the men pointed toward the forest and whispered. The trees were listening. That was the last sensible thing anyone said that day. By sunset, every villager man, woman, and child was brought inside the great hall, the longhouse where feasts were normally held. The storm had risen without warning, hammering the rooftops, clawing at the wooden walls, howling like 1,000 wolves caught in 1,000 traps. The doors were barred, the windows sealed, and in the center of that great room, only one fire was lit, one single flame for the entire village. It should have been warm, but the warmth felt afraid. Erik sat closest to it. A warrior of many battles, he had returned only weeks before. He was taller than most, broad-shouldered, with scars that crisscrossed his arms like runes carved by fate itself. But there were new scars then, jagged, fresh. Scars he refused to speak of. Those who knew him best said he had changed during the journey home. They said he woke every night gasping, searching the shadows. They said he muttered in his sleep, whispering to someone who wasn't there. And tonight, his eyes had not left the fire even once. The villagers murmured among themselves, frightened but trying to remain hopeful. Children huddled together, women clutched their cloaks tightly, and the old men sat with their backs straight and their jaws clenched, pretending they were not trembling. Then the door burst open. A wave of snow swept into the hall, followed by a hunched figure Sigrid, the village Volva. Her hair was wild with frost, and her pale eyes were wide with terror. She stumbled forward and fell to her knees, her breath coming in sharp, broken gasps. "Close it," she cried. "Close the door. Now, 3 men rushed to shove the heavy wooden bar back into place, but the wind fought them, pushing against the door as though a giant stood on the other side. When it finally slammed shut, the hall fell into utter silence. Sigrid rose, shaking, her hands clutching at something concealed beneath her cloak. "Listen carefully," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Tonight, the storm is not our enemy. It hides something far worse." A ripple of fear passed across the room. Even Erik lifted his gaze. Sigrid reached into her cloak and pulled out a small object wrapped in leather. When she unwrapped it, a stone fell into her palm-black, polished, unnaturally smooth. It glowed faintly with a cold, pulsing light. Gasps echoed through the hall. Little Leif, the orphan boy who clung to Erik's leg like a shadow, peered up at her and whispered, "Volva, is that a rune?" "No," Sigrid replied, her voice barely above a breath. "It is older than runes, older than words, older than snow." The chieftain stepped forward. "Where did you find that thing?" "On the northern path," she said, "where Runa disappeared. The stone was warm. The ground around it had melted, and there were marks in the snow, deep as graves. Something has awakened, something that should have remained buried beneath the ice." A hush fell over the hall as she stepped closer to the fire. "When I touched the stone," Sigrid continued, "I saw visions, shadows moving through the storm. A shape tall, thin, faceless. It walked without sound, and wherever it stepped, the world faded." She looked toward the door. "And it is coming here." The villagers erupted in fear. Voices rose. Children cried. The chieftain shouted for silence, but his voice cracked. Then, suddenly, the fire dimmed. Not because the wood burned low, but because the flame recoiled, as though something were drawing its heat away. A cold wave passed over the hall, extinguishing every breath of warmth. Erik stood, gripping an axe he had carried even inside. His knuckles whitened around the handle. "What does it want?" he demanded. Sigrid did not answer immediately. Her eyes were fixed on the fire, watching as the flame shrank and trembled like a living thing cornered by a predator. "It seeks the stone," she whispered at last, "but not to take it back. To complete it, to feed it. For this is no ordinary object. It is a heart. A heart carved from the first winter the world ever knew." Leif tugged at Erik's arm. "A heart of winter?" "Yes," Sigrid said. "From an age before the gods shaped Midgard. Before Odin breathed life into men. Before fire and frost were forced apart. This is a remnant of that ancient war. A piece of the old darkness." Her voice shook. "And the thing that seeks it remembers eternity." As she spoke, the wind outside shifted. It no longer howled, it whispered, softly, rhythmically, like breath against a window. Then, 3 knocks. Knock, knock. The hall froze. Every head turned toward the door. No one breathed. Sigrid clutched the stone tighter. The knocking came again. Slow, gentle, almost polite. Knock, knock. The chieftain stepped backward, his face bloodless. "Who? Who is there?" Silence. Then a familiar voice replied, "Arn, let me in." Murmurs spread through the villagers. Arn? It was impossible. Arn sat right there hunched, shaking, terrified, staring at the door in horror. But the voice outside spoke again. "Open the door. It is cold." Every hair on every neck stood upright. The chieftain whispered, "Arn, what is that?" The real Arn stammered, I don't know. I don't know what that is. I swear on Odin's name, I never left this hall." Sigrid stepped forward, raising the stone. The glow pulsed faster now, brighter, as though reacting to something on the other side of the door. "Back away from the entrance," she warned. "All of you." Her voice shook, but her command was iron. Behind her, the fire shrank again, almost to nothing. Outside, the voice repeated, slightly louder this time. "Let me in." But the tone had changed, just a little. Enough to reveal something beneath the mimicry. Something hollow, something cold, something that did not understand how human words truly worked. Leif whimpered and buried his face against Erik's leg. The warrior lifted the boy into his arms, holding him tightly as the air grew colder, the wood in the walls groaning under a pressure too heavy to see. Sigrid raised the stone higher. Its light flickered white, then black, then white again, beating like two hearts at war with each other. Then the voice outside whispered, very softly, "I see you." And something pressed against the door. Not a hand, not a fist. Something wider. Something flat. Something searching. The wood bulged inward, as though pressed by a skin stretched too tight over bone. The fire almost died. Sigrid screamed, "Everyone back!" The villagers stumbled away, just as the door strained again, but did not break. Not yet. Then the pressure stopped. The whispering wind fell silent. The hall held its breath. Nothing moved. Minutes passed. 1, 2, 5, 10. The fire slowly returned to life, but the warmth did not. Sigrid collapsed onto a bench, clutching the stone. Her hands trembled violently. "It is testing us," she murmured. "Learning us. It only needs one mistake. One opening. One crack." Erik placed Leif down gently beside him and crouched beside the Volva. "What do we do?" he asked. She lifted her eyes to his eyes, filled with horror. "We wait," she said, "and we pray the fire holds. For it is the last fire in Skjoldheim. And when it dies..." She stared at the door. "So do we." And then the stone in her hand pulsed once more. A deep, resonant thud sounded somewhere outside. Not a knock, not a footstep, but something heavier. Something falling, something landing. Something that had finally reached the village. Sigrid choked on her breath. "It's here." The fire flickered, then froze. The flame itself trembled like a frightened animal. And the long night truly began. A fire had burned lower by the time Erik finally spoke. Its glow now a deeper orange, the flames slower, calmer, as though the longhouse itself sensed the danger pressing at its walls. Outside, the wind had grown heavier and more deliberate, rolling across the frozen land with a slow, predatory rhythm. Snow hit the wooden boards like thousands of soft knocks, but every so often there came a strike louder than the rest, a reminder that something beyond the storm was moving with purpose. Something searching. Eira sat close to the fire, but she did not extend her hands toward the heat. She simply stared into the flames as though they were speaking to her, whispering memories only she could hear. Her shoulders trembled not from cold, but from something much older, something she had lived with long before she ever stepped into Erik's longhouse. Erik watched her for a long time. He had seen many things in the world. Men broken by battle, women who survived what no one should endure, creatures hidden in forests older than memory itself. But he had never seen someone quite like Eira, someone who carried the weight of a story so heavy that even the fire seemed to bow before it. "What happened after the shadow appeared?" Erik asked quietly, keeping his voice low so that whatever lurked outside could not hear. Eira blinked slowly, her eyes reflecting the firelight as she returned to the present. "You want the truth," she said. "But the truth is not something that should be spoken lightly, Erik. Even the air listens when certain things are said aloud." He nodded. "Say it anyway." Eira inhaled sharply, gathering herself before her voice softened into something fragile yet unbreakable. "It followed me," she whispered. "But not the way a beast follows prey. It followed me the way a memory follows a nightmare. Always there, always close. Something I could feel pressing against the back of my neck, even when I could not see it." She closed her eyes. And then the white-haired man appeared. Erik leaned forward. "Start from the beginning. Eira nodded slowly, the weight of the memory pulling her shoulders down. "It was the night after my village burned," she said. "I had walked until I could barely feel my legs. The snow swallowed my footsteps as fast as I made them, and the trees grew thicker the deeper I went. I remember thinking that the forest did not want me there, that it was trying to hide something. And I was right. The fire crackled softly. I found myself in a clearing," she continued, "a place where the trees bent unnaturally inward, as though they were bowing not to me, but to something behind me. When I turned, I saw him." Erik said nothing, letting her speak. He stood in the snow, barefoot, wrapped only in a cloak of gray wool. His hair was long and white, drifting slowly in the wind even when the air was still. And his eyes, her voice dropped. His eyes were clear, pale, like thin ice on a still lake. But they were not human eyes, Erik. They were ancient, too ancient for any living man. Erik's fingers tightened slightly around the haft of his axe. "He spoke?" he asked. Eira nodded. Not at first. He simply watched me, as though he was waiting for something. Some sign, some movement. And then he lifted his hand and pointed north, toward the mountains. The wind rose behind him, swirling the snow around his legs. That was when he finally opened his mouth. Erik's heartbeat slowed, heavy and deliberate. And what did he say? Eira met his gaze, her voice trembling. "He said your name." Erik exhaled, a slow and painful breath. "And that is why you came here." "Yes," she whispered, "because I do not understand why a creature like him would know your name, nor why the shadow wants me, nor why the mark burns when the night grows too still." She hesitated, then pulled the fabric of her tunic aside, revealing the carved circle split by a jagged crack. The mark glowed faintly in the firelight, as though it was absorbing the warmth rather than reflecting it. Erik stared at it for a long time, his jaw tightening. "The sundering mark," he murmured. "I had hoped never to see it again." Eira swallowed. "You said earlier that you know what it means, that you know what the gate demands." He looked into the fire. "I do," he said. "But some truths come with a price, Eira, and the moment you hear them, they become yours to bear. Are you ready for that burden?" Eira did not hesitate. "I have already lost everything. What more is there to fear?" Erik raised his gaze slowly. "Memory." The fire sputtered, sparks rising like dying stars. "Eira," he said softly, "listen carefully. The creature hunting you, the shadow, it is not seeking to kill you. It is seeking to erase you." Eira's brow tightened. "Erase me?" "Yes," he said. "Not your life, your memory, your existence. Everything you have ever been, ever seen, ever touched, gone, as though you never lived." Eira felt the breath leave her lungs. "But why?" she whispered. "Why me?" Erik's eyes shifted to the window, where the wind pressed against the wood with a low moan. "Because of the gate," he said. "And because of what you are." She swallowed. "What am I?" Erik hesitated, the truth catching in his throat. "You are the harbinger of the Sundering." The room fell silent. Eira's pulse thundered in her ears. "The sagas say the harbinger is a myth." "No," Erik said, his voice dark and heavy. "A lie disguised as a myth. A truth hidden inside a story so impossible that no one would believe it. The harbinger is real. The Sundering is real. And the gate is not meant to be opened by force. It is meant to be opened by you." Eira's hands trembled. "But I don't know anything about a gate," she whispered. "I don't understand any of this." "You will," Erik said. "Once we reach the mountains." She shook her head. "Tell me now." "No," he said firmly. "There are things you must see with your own eyes. And you will, if we survive until dawn." A sudden thud slammed against the outside wall. Eira flinched. Erik rose to his feet, axe in hand. "It's closer." Another thud. This one deeper, heavier, as though a massive hand pressed its weight against the longhouse. The fire dimmed, the wind stilled, and the world outside seemed to hold its breath. Then came the voice, low, broken, and horribly familiar. "Erik." Eira gripped her cloak. "That voice," she whispered. "It's calling you by name." "It is not my name," Erik growled. "Not anymore." The voice came again, scraping like stone dragged across ice. "Erik of the Broken Oath. Open the door." Eira's blood ran cold. "Who is that?" Erik's breathing slowed. "An Oathkeeper." "Oathkeeper?" she repeated. He nodded grimly. "One of the few who survived what happened 20 years ago. One of the few who remembers what we tried to bury." Eira stepped closer to him. "And what did you bury?" Erik's jaw tightened. "Our betrayal." Before she could ask more, the door shuddered violently. A single blow that nearly tore it from its hinges. Snow drifted through the cracks, pulled inward as though the creature outside was inhaling the warmth of the longhouse. The voice pressed closer, its tone rising into something almost pleading. "You cannot run from the oath, Erik. You cannot run from what you opened." Eira's eyes widened. "Opened? Erik, what did you open?" He did not answer. He could not answer. Another blow struck, this time hard enough to crack the frame of the door. "We have to run," Erik said. "Now." Eira hesitated. "But if we run, that thing will follow." "It will follow anyway," Erik said. "But inside this longhouse, we have no chance at all." He grabbed his cloak, slung it over his shoulder, and reached for a small leather pouch tied to the wall. Inside it, something clinked, metal on metal. "What's in there?" Eira asked. "A piece of the oath," he said. "One of the reasons they want me dead." Another blow smashed against the wood, sending splinters across the floor. "We leave," Erik said. "Through the back." He moved quickly, pulling aside a heavy fur to reveal a narrow passage leading to the outside. It was barely wide enough to crawl through. Eira froze. What if it's waiting out there? Erik turned to her, his eyes steady, unshaken by fear. "If it was waiting out there," he said, "we'd already be dead." She nodded, swallowing hard. Erik crawled through first, emerging into the freezing night. The snowstorm swallowed him instantly. Eira followed, clutching her cloak tightly around her. When she emerged beside him, their longhouse groaned behind them, the door finally giving way. The sound that came next was not a growl, not a roar, but a slow, shuddering breath, colder than the wind itself. Erik grabbed Eira's wrist. "Don't look back." She didn't. She forced her legs through the snow, following Erik as he led her toward the dark line of trees. The storm swallowed everything. The longhouse, the horizon, the world behind them. But through the howling wind, Eira heard it. A whisper, soft, almost gentle. "Harbinger." Her blood froze. Erik tightened his grip. "Keep moving." "It sees you," she did. But with every step she took, the weight of the truth pressed deeper into her bones. Erik had known her fate long before she arrived. He had known the creature hunting her long before it ever found her. And somewhere in the snowy darkness behind them, something ancient rose from the shattered doorway of the longhouse and followed. The storm grew louder as Erik and Eira pushed deeper into the forest, but something about the wind felt wrong now. It wasn't wild or natural. It was rhythmic, pulsing, as if moving in time with the footsteps of the thing that followed them. The snow whirled around their bodies in tight, spiraling patterns, almost forming shapes, hands, faces, empty eyes, before they dissolved back into the night. Eira stumbled once, catching herself on the thick trunk of a pine tree. Erik turned immediately, pulling her up by the arm. "We have to keep moving," he said, though his breath came out ragged. Fear lived inside his voice now, a quiet fear he tried to bury beneath strength. Eira nodded, though her legs trembled. "How far until the mountains?" "Farther than we want," Erik said. "But closer than the creature thinks." Just as he spoke, something cracked in the woods behind them. A sound like ice splitting across a frozen lake. Eira's heart lurched. Erik placed a hand on her back. "Do not turn around." She didn't, but she felt it. A pressure, a presence, like cold fingers brushing her spine. Erik looked ahead toward a shadowed ridge. "There's a path through the black pines," he said. "A hidden trail used by oathbreakers and wanderers. If we reach it before the creature closes the distance, we might gain enough time to reach the foothills." "And if we don't?" Eira asked. Erik did not answer. They trudged forward, step after step, their bodies stiff with cold. The world around them became tighter, darker, as though the forest itself leaned inward to watch them pass. Above, the moon hid behind thick clouds, offering no light. Only the wind spoke, a long drawn-out whisper that circled them like a serpent. Eira clutched her cloak. "The shadow. Is it close?" Erik scanned the darkness behind them. "Closer than it should be." "How do you know?" He hesitated. "Because I can hear it breathing." The words made the air stop. Even the wind seemed to fall still. Then, just beyond the tree line, something exhaled. A long, slow, shuddering breath that shook ice from the branches. Eira's skin crawled. "Move," Erik whispered. They pushed forward quickly now, the ground rising slightly as they neared the hidden path. Snow stung their cheeks, the storm tightening around them like a closing fist. Then, from somewhere behind them, a sound. Not a growl, not a roar, but a deep, dragging scrape, like something enormous being pulled across the snow. Eira's heart pounded. "Erik, I know," he said. "Don't look. Don't give it the recognition it wants." Eira clenched her jaw and forced herself forward. Her feet burned with cold, her lungs aching. They crested a small hill, and the path revealed itself. A narrow trail, snaking between two towering cliffs of dark stone. Erik grabbed her hand. "Go, now." They sprinted down the trail, the stone walls rising on either side, narrowing, sheltering them from the worst of the storm. For a moment, the world felt muted. Still, too still. Eira slowed. "Why is it quieter here?" "Because this place," Erik said, "is older than storms." The rock around them seemed to hum with ancient memory, its surface etched with faint marks, spirals, lines, symbols that pulsed faintly under the ambient light. Eira brushed her fingers across one of them, and a shock of warmth ran through her hand. "What are these?" "Runes of the first gate," Erik said. "We're close." Her breath hitched. "The gate? The one the white-haired man spoke of?" Erik nodded grimly. "The Sundering Gate." A sudden gust howled behind them. Eira turned involuntarily, and she froze. At the entrance of the trail, framed by swirling snow, stood a silhouette. Tall, distorted, wrong. It leaned forward slightly, as if studying them. Its limbs were long and thin, its outline shifting like smoke, its head tilted unnaturally slow. And it did nothing. It simply stood there, watching, breathing. Eira's voice cracked. "Erik, what is that?" Erik lifted his axe. The shadow made flesh. It took a single step forward, the snow melting beneath its foot. Erik grabbed Eira again. "Run!" They tore down the trail, the shadow following, its movement silent, gliding across the snow without disturbing a single flake. The trail opened suddenly into a vast clearing, a frozen lake. And beyond it, carved into the mountainside like a wound in the world, was a massive stone door, circular, cracked, through the center with jagged lines that pulsed faintly with cold, pale light. Eira felt her pulse match the rhythm of the glow. "The gate?" she whispered. Erik nodded. "We made it." The shadow stepped onto the frozen lake behind them, its reflection warping across the ice. Eira stared at the giant stone circle. Her mark, the carved circle on her skin, burned. It's reacting, she said, gripping her chest. It will, Erik said. You are tied to it. The Harbinger always is. Eira turned toward him, fear twisting inside her. Tell me what it wants, please. Erik lowered his axe slowly. The Sundering Gate, he said, is not a doorway between worlds. It is a doorway between memories. Eira frowned. I don't understand. Erik stepped closer. There were things that lived before time. Things that fed on memory, on identity, on the very idea of existence. The first gate was built to imprison them, not in another world, but in the forgotten places of our own minds. Eira's breath trembled. And the shadow? One of them, Erik said. A devourer, a memory eater, a remnant of what came before us. Eira's stomach twisted. And me? What am I? Erik looked pained. The Harbinger is not someone chosen by fate. It is someone chosen by the gate itself. And what does it want me to do? Erik hesitated. It wants you to open it. A crack thundered across the frozen lake, the shadow drawing nearer. Eira stepped back. Why me? Because your mind carries something ancient, Erik said. Something buried so deep that only the gate recognizes it. You are its key? Eira felt tears prick her eyes. I don't want this. It doesn't matter, Erik said. The choice was made long before you were born. The shadow moved closer. The ice beneath it cracked. The stone gate pulsed. Eira clutched her head. Images began to flash. A vast, endless void, voices screaming from beyond sight. A figure of light breaking into a million shards. What's happening? She cried. The gate is calling you, Erik said. Resisting will only make it stronger. Eira fell to her knees, the world spinning around her. Erik knelt beside her, his voice softening. Eira, listen to me. The shadow wants to erase you, because it fears what the gate will release if you open it. Eira forced her trembling gaze to meet his. Release what? Erik whispered the word as if it were a curse. Memory, Eira shuddered. I don't. Suddenly, a voice erupted inside her mind. Open the gate. Her eyes widened. It was the white-haired man. Open it, Harbinger. Let memory return. Let the forgotten remember. Eira screamed, clutching her head. Erik held her shoulders. Fight it. The shadow was almost upon them now, its body stretching into impossible shapes, its limbs bending like the branches of a dead tree. It spoke, not aloud, inside their minds. Do not open the gate, or all that was forgotten will return. Eira gasped, caught between two ancient voices. What do I do? She begged. Erik looked at her with a sorrow so deep it hollowed him. You choose. The world trembled. The gate pulsed brighter. The shadow reached for her, and Eira stood. Her eyes glowed with the same pale light as the gate. She stepped toward the stone circle, her feet moving without resistance, as though she had walked this path 1,000 times before. Erik called out, Eira, stop! But she didn't. She placed her trembling hand on the cold stone. The mark on her chest burned like fire. The crack in the gate widened. The ground shook. The air rippled. Erik staggered back, shielding his eyes from the blinding light. The shadow screamed, a horrible silent scream that tore through the world like a blade. Eira spoke, her voice layered with countless voices. I remember. The gate shattered. Light erupted outward. The shadow dissolved, torn apart, scattered like ash across the frozen wind. Erik fell to his knees. The lake cracked beneath him. The world dimmed. And when the light finally faded, Eira was gone. Only a faint circle of pale light remained on the stone where she had stood. Erik rose slowly, tears freezing on his cheeks. He whispered into the empty air, Harbinger. But the wind only carried silence. The gate stood open now. Whatever lay beyond memory had returned, and the world would never be the same again.